Welcome back to the Sportsball Podcast. I am your host, Andy, joined by my co-hosts, Nate and Zach, your source for sports here. And if you thought last week was wild and crazy with Trev Alberts up and leaving, today, as of recording on Wednesday, has been a wild wind and of a hires for Nebraska. We had talked about last week, they need to hire a president. It's going to take months before we get an AD because they got to get a president in. And then we wake up this morning and we have a new AD. And then hours later, we have a new primed candidate for president that the Board of Regents selected. So a lot has happened with Nebraska leadership within the past 24, not even 24 hours, 12 hours. And then and then you go back to what happened on Sunday. It's Selection Sunday, with the basketball teams getting picked to play Texas A&M, which we'll dive into later. And all of a sudden you're like, oh man, this is all about Trev Alberts. And now you're getting competent leadership back into the fold of Nebraska and everything and so on and so forth. But bottom line is Nebraska acted swift. They acted quick to get permanent leaders into these roles now. My only opinion with that is hopefully these were not, just a jump of the gun type picks just to get leaders into place before, truly wanting who you want to be in these leadership roles. Now with the president's search, I know that one was a little bit more solidified from the Board of Regents. Dr. Jeff Gold is who they selected as their primary leading candidate for the Board of Regents, who now goes through a 30-day vetting process before, officially being inducted as the president of the University of Nebraska school system. But just if you know anything about him, like the past 10 or so years, he's just been heavily involved with the UNMC and the hospital side of things, being the chairman, chancellor for UNMC and all that. So it really kind of was like a no-brainer pick for the Regents. And surprisingly enough, that's who Trev wanted to be picked as the next president for Nebraska. And so you could read into the tea leaves all you want, is then he leaves and then the Regents are like, yeah, we're going to go with this guy instead. So maybe it's a middle finger to Trev and some pettiness. I don't really know. But regardless, it seems like from what I've read about him is he's, a no-brain hire to lead Nebraska and the presidential duties for however long he's going to stay here and everything. And excited to see what he does, just from a financial standpoint. And I know a little bit was having kind of that medicine, UNMC background, being a doctor and everything, that Nebraska is still trying to get back into the AAU type of foundation. And, within the Big Ten, the Big Ten is really like, they're all about athletics, but they're also high and mighty of like, yeah, we want to be about education and academics too. Where like the SEC, really is like, we care more about athletics more than anything else. But regardless, for those that don't know what like the AAU is, it's basically just like, you're one of the top leading research institutions. If you're a part of this, club, quote unquote, to say for the least, as part of the university system. And Nebraska has not been a part of it since they've been in the Big Ten. And so I think this pick is a little bit more gear slided to trying to get Nebraska back into that research university type role within the AAU, so that they're one of the Big Ten members that is an AAU university.
Interestingly enough, we are the only Big Ten member that is not a part of the AAU.
Yes, even the ones that are incoming are all AAU members. So, I'm sure a little bit had to do with that portion of the academic side of his being named president going forward. So be interested to see what they do from that standpoint. But then the news that happened right before that, about 2 hours earlier, was a nice Pete Thamel tweeted about, I think, 9 o'clock this morning. And this one kind of really came out of left field, because from everything that I've seen online, and even like the Washington beat reporters I've looked out and scoped out, they were like, there was absolutely no indication whatsoever that this guy was going to just up and leave Washington and then finalize a 6-year deal at Nebraska with that. So very, very just like a lot that happened within a couple of hours. But Nebraska's new AD, Troy Dannon, I believe is how you say his name, from Zach kind of laid out the resumes earlier for me, from which I'm basing all of this off of. But he's from Iowa, so he's from the Midwest, and from everything that I've read, it looked like he just wanted to come back home eventually. But he's been the AD at Northern Iowa in Tulane, and he kind of helped build and resurrect those athletic programs, it sounds like, especially Tulane football. The past couple of years in that rise, he was their AD during that portion of it as well. So he kind of resurrected those athletic programs. Then he leaves to Washington for all of 5 months, kind of the end of October or somewhere in the October timeframe that I think he got announced there. Tried to get Kalen DeBoer to stay, really didn't get Kalen DeBoer to stay, fired their basketball coach, hired a football coach, and then he left. So that's kind of his time at Washington, was about 5 months with that. But what was interesting enough was, and I know I sent that podcast link to you guys earlier today. He had an interview he recorded probably 9 or 10 days ago, talking about how he wanted to be at a university that was kind of a strong foundation and about winning. And he said those comments, and he kind of geared it towards, like, he kind of threw shade at Nebraska, saying like, yeah, Nebraska, has been trying to dig themselves out of the ground for the past 20 years or anything. Keeping that in mind, that when he had this interview, Trev was still our AD. There probably wasn't even a radar glimpse of the Nebraska job on his side at all. And now all of a sudden he's leading Nebraska into this new college football, college athletics type future that we're heading towards right now. So, it's still, I don't really know much about him outside of that. I mean, I'm sure we'll know more as the coming days, and as he gives us his press conference, and we find out more when we do, I guess, when the local media does a lot more deep dive pieces onto, just his career type and everything. But seems like he just wants to be at a place that has a strong foundation, wants to win now, wants to keep winning for the future. And, it's with Northern Iowa and Tulane. I mean, it's hard not to say that he had success with those programs, trying to get them to win. I mean, Tulane's been to a more recent bowl game than Nebraska. So
they won the Cotton Bowl a few years ago.
Yeah. So it's hard to say that, like, he doesn't know what he's doing, because it's clearly better than what we did type thing. But yeah, I'll pass it to one of you two there, and just your thoughts on the past week of terms of leadership changes for Nebraska here.
Yeah, I'll chime in. I don't know much about this Dr. Jeff Gould guy, but I mean, he's, like you mentioned, he is a chancellor with UNMC. I believe he's a heart surgeon, and I just read through like a brief bio of him, and it's just like accolade on like committee member on committee member. So, I mean, he seems pretty well invested in a lot of different academic kind of goings-ons within the university, within honestly the nation and everything. So, seems like a solid hire. It is interesting timing. I'm sure there is something about with Trev leaving and saying that leadership isn't in place, that I'm sure somewhere someone said, hey, we should maybe do something. I don't know if it was in spite of Trev or because of the situation or how all that shook out. I'm sure we'll probably never know the exact details of that, but it is interesting, and it overall, at least on the surface, seems like a solid hire. He seems like a guy who knows good academic stuff, so I would imagine he would if UNMC held him in high regard, I imagine that's probably a good sign for everything going forward for the university overall on that side. So that's about my 2 cents on that one. Otherwise, just the AAU standing is probably going to be trying to resurrect that and get us kind of more in compliance, if you will, with the rest of the Big Ten. So that'll be another good thing. I mean, I have a degree from the university, so if they want to like make that a little better, I'm not going to complain about it, I guess. So otherwise, the Dannon hire seems solid as well. I mean, the main red flag is that he was only in Washington for what, 5.5 months or so, and I mean, it is a red flag, I will say that, but I can understand reasoning of wanting. I mean, in all aspects, Nebraska's at least on an upward trajectory. And, with the basketball teams, the football teams at least seems positioned to do something. Baseball's doing all right. Softball has Jordy Ball when she gets all fixed up. So, in the athletic sense, everything is pretty well in place. It's just kind of managing it and making sure you oversee things at that point. And I imagine it's fairly lucrative. And, he's an Iowa guy. He's from Iowa. So, being closer to home, I'm sure at least factored into his decision, if nothing else. So, but kind of like you mentioned, he oversaw Tulane when they had their kind of big turnaround in football. And I believe Northern Iowa seemed at least better than he left it. And I saw a nugget that Scott Frost was on one of the football teams when he was AD. So could be a reunion incoming.
We should just ban that word. So Zach, if you want to go through and anytime we say that word, if you just want to add the bleep filter, you're more than welcome.
It's just going to be it's actually going to be like a robotic filter. So it says Scott Frost is going to be redacted.
A lot of PTC
I heard this old coach by the name of Redacted also used to coach at.
That would make this so much more interesting because then you'd have to figure out who we're talking about. When the context around it would be fairly obvious, but still
in the context that Nate just said, that'd be tough. But
yes,
in the context of what the central point is here, probably not as tough.
But yeah, he seems like good guy. His offers for 6 years. I saw the details of the pay. I can't remember off the top of my head what it was, but
it's a lot more than Trev was making. I'll tell you that.
It's a 6-year deal, so clearly doesn't mean a whole lot depending on the AD. But he at least signed a 6-year deal, so in theory, he's kind of in it for the long haul, which is always good to see. So, and then it seemed like I saw that some people did an interview with Rule, and I think Hoiberg, and they all said that they at least have some connection with him, they like him, and are excited to work with him. So that's always positive to hear that the people he'll be overseeing are excited about it. So that's kind of all I got. I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on it, Zach.
Not really. I know we were talking about it earlier, not in major detail, just because we like to, weirdly enough, save our takes for when we do this. But the 5-month thing at Washington, I guess it didn't really concern me in the same level as it did you. And I'm not saying that you were sitting there sweating bullets over it, but to me, I was just more of the understanding, the way that, the football team performed. It's I don't think you really need him to be the athletic director after they just went, even though they lost, they still went to the national championship in football. I think I read that did he fire a basketball coach or something?
Yeah.
So, it's not like he didn't do anything. The only thing that I saw that, this was all, I think, Twitter rumor mill and whatnot. I think somebody responded to a Jack Mitchell tweet saying that he wasn't, that players were not big fans of him as an athletic director, but I don't know how much weight that bears on hiring an athletic director. Cause I know Trev was very much involved with them, but I don't know what that involvement means outside of being there for games and saying, hey, I'm here to support you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, if that involvement of him as an AD is he doesn't talk to the student athletes as much, I personally don't really see that as a problem. I could see it being contentious, but like you guys both said, if Hoiberg and Rule, specifically Rule in this case, because I think Hoiberg's doing well this year, but he has to maintain it in order for me to really, if we make it back to the March Madness tournament again next year, then it's okay, he's got things figured out. If we take a dive, if we nose dive after this year, it's was it a fluke at that point? I don't think we will, but it's something to keep in mind. But with Matt Rule specifically pointing out that the reason that he wanted to come here was because of Trev and because of all the leadership who then left. And now he's also saying, I really like this AD hire. I think he's the one that you have to focus on if you're the leadership saying, yes, Fred and the other remaining coaches are still important to this discussion. But, after you watch Nebraska's football year last year and you see, just like, Nate said, the trajectory is going up, he's probably going to be the one that you want to make sure you keep him happy at minimum. And besides, Fred signed his extension. Did I also see before we started this, Amy Williams did too?
She sure did.
So, I mean,
both signed through the 2028, 2029 seasons.
Yep.
And I like the moves. And then as for the president, I don't know about him, but just from the limited info I've seen on him, seems like a perfect candidate for it, I guess. So nothing really more to put in there, I guess. Just yay. I was more just happy to see that Nebraska leadership, in terms of at least the college system here and our sports ideology that we look at here, was able to do something that I don't think any governmental body does ever, and they moved quick. So good for them. You know what?
Right.
Credit where it's due. I am more intrigued by if that's the president that Trev wanted. Now, I really want to know what's going on
from
behind
the rumors that I've
seen.
That's like supposedly that's who Trev wanted, was Gold, and I don't know if just because the Regents were at that point at a stalemate between Gold and somebody else, and I don't know if it's now because Trev is gone. They're like, okay, we're just going to go with Gold just to get a definitive answer. But supposedly, yes, Trev wanted Gold, but I don't know why they decided now instead of earlier, but who knows? And who knows if that would have made him stay too. I mean, there's no correlation that we know of right now. It's like if the Regents would have chose Gold earlier, Trev still might be here type thing. Like we don't know.
Yeah, and then beyond that, like now that we have people in place, it's kind of the other speculation is it just because Trev didn't see himself being able to do. I know, like there was contention between like I think people liked the idea of his upgrades. They didn't like the money aspect of his upgrades. And so maybe he was butting a lot of heads and he was like, which at the end of the day, we'll probably never truthfully know, but I'm very curious if it was just something like that. He's like, well, I never saw it going anywhere. And it's like, okay, so you just gave up? Like, I mean, at least he didn't close the wrestling department.
Yeah. And I also look at the whole Trev thing. It's like, there's not a guarantee that, it would be another year. Like he could be gone in a year too. Depending on how the stadium project would have went and how Nebraska would have done in football. I mean, maybe next year Trev then would have decided like, okay, there's a position on the committee or a bigger, SEC school that would have opened up that I want to jump ship to type thing. So knowing now that like that's what we truly know Trev wanted to do. I mean, yes, at some point Trev was probably going to leave, and considering he did it now, I mean, you probably could have guessed that it would have been the next year or two that he probably would have left, just given how quickly he left here right now. And then, yeah, it's another thing. It's like, with this new AD is, does he get presented Trev's plan for South Stadium, and does he revise it? Does he just say, yeah, let's just go along with it? Like this needs work. Is he just, because the first thing Trev did when he came in was like, I don't know if you guys got these emails, but like it was the fan survey email for Memorial Stadium or anything like that. I know I did because I've bought tickets there before and or have season tickets, either or. But Trev was really much of a fan type AD leader first, where like the fans come first because that is the backbone of Nebraska loyalty for their athletic department. Is the financials will always be there. It's what's driving them to still be relevant is the fan base. And I know, like I said, when Trev first came and he sent out like the massive Memorial Stadium like fan survey to everybody. It's like, what do you see? What do you want added? What do you want improved? Like, what what do fans want going forward? And I think the top answer for like, comfortable seating, affordable ticket pricing, and, so on and so forth, better concessions, restrooms, access, everything like that. And obviously with that comes with, reducing stadium size. Because right now Memorial Stadium's at about 90,000, but, what Trev had proposed was, all of South Stadium would be rebuilt, which still needs to be fully done and rebuilt. I stand by that 10 out of 10 times. Whatever happens to that. Like South Stadium just needs to be done and rebuilt. But you also look at it as the only way to get that comfortable seating is you take out the benches at Memorial Stadium and put seat backs, but you're going to lose 4,000 to 5,000 seats. And that also is another logistics question is who gets kicked out of those seats? Like, who do you take season tickets away from and say, sorry, you didn't donate enough money or anything like that? Like, that's probably what's going to happen. But do you want to be more comfortable at a football game at Memorial Stadium and not sit on bleachers and, not be, so tight packed in a row next to everybody else and so on and so forth. But, that hopefully that question will be answered in time. But I'm interested to see what he comes in and if he wants to go forward with that plan, if he revises it. Like, I have no idea what's going to happen. I hope something happens because South Stadium needs to be touched up in some way, whether you tear it all down to build it back up or got the whole thing. Like, I don't know what's going to happen, but South Stadium definitely looks like it needs to be renovated so badly. But with that, unless you guys have anything on those updates, kind of not really much for NFL. I mean, unless it happened locally to your sports team, I don't think there were any other big breaking free agent signings or trades that happened since we last talked.
Yeah,
I think now the big exciting thing is just I shouldn't say the big exciting thing, but now the one to watch for is just the draft and stuff that happened before that.
Yep, Vikings traded some picks for the 23rd pick. So we have 11 and 23 with the expectation that we'll move up, but the possibility that we might not. So it's just kind of rumor, Phil.
Same. Same for Denver. I know they won't do it, but they keep talking about it. And I'm like, what do we have to give?
Yeah.
Nothing.
That was, in theory, the reason why we moved up. But I haven't heard anything actually definitive. And I mean, obviously they're going to play everything close to the vest. But yeah. The only other news that Mike Williams, he signed with the Jets.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
The guy that tore his ACL is going to the turf that tore Aaron Rodgers' Achilles. So I'm sure that's going to end well.
That's okay. Maybe Aaron Rodgers will play for like 6 plays this next time.
He'll be busy in the White House, Zach.
Yeah, Zach.
Oh, that's right.
On.
Sorry.
RFK's running mate.
I forgot. My B.
You silly goose.
My B.
But yeah, I think college football is kind of we touched on the same thing with the university leadership. I mean, that's really what's impacting, at least locally, us for college football this week was just the new AD announcement today. But
college football's been pretty quiet since then. Otherwise,
yeah, so. I know Nebraska they started Rule called it team commitment drills this week, but I think next week is when they officially start spring practice.
Nice.
Because
they were hosting the pro day today, though.
Yes, they did host the pro day today, and the quarterback throwing the football was none other than Dylan Raiola.
And Daniel Kalen.
And Daniel Kalen.
Kalen was in there too.
If you want to go look at the Twitter videos, I think from Mitch Sherman and Evan Bland, who were there, of watching Dylan just huck a football 50 yards with no effort whatsoever, it gets you a little bit excited, little tingling sensation. Obviously there's no defense or anything with him throwing the ball, but he just drops back and it's just like, it looks like he's just lightly tossing his arm and that ball just sails 50 yards, no effort whatsoever. So encourage you to go watch that. It'll get you just a little bit more hype and anticipation to watch our star recruit. But then, yeah, I'm sure we'll have. Rule spoke earlier this week too. I think on Monday. kind of about the whole. Obviously, a lot of that tone has changed now since we have the AD in place. But he was firm. He said he was like firmly committed to staying here and being here at Nebraska, and he and his family have invested just so much in just Nebraska and where they're living in Lincoln right now. It's that was kind of our worry that we talked about last week was. Is Rule, is Hoiberg, Amy Williams, all these coaches, like, are they going to leave now that we don't have leadership in place? And, they've all come out and said, like, yeah, we're in support of being here. We want to be here.
The only one that hasn't had to say anything is John Cook, who's been like, I've been through worse, guys. What are you talking about?
Yeah. And sitting back in the corner through all these AD president changes for decades is John Cook.
They're sitting there talking about, like, who do we want as the next athletic director? And he's sitting there like, just keep my head
Just don't look at me. Don't look at me.
And I wouldn't blame him.
If I duck really low, no one will notice me.
It was nice, though, to hear that Rule not only just like committed again to Nebraska, which I think we had talked about. It's like, I shouldn't say it's not surprising, but it's like, it's good to hear, even if it's a hollow thing. It's like, we don't know it's hollow, but him saying it. But then he also said, like, his wife is opening a business in South Lincoln. So it's like, well, that to me, and then his son's going to Nebraska in the fall, I think the fall or whatever. So it's like, they still could move. Anything can happen. It's not a totally foregone conclusion that he's staying here for sure, but it certainly is looking like he doesn't want to go anywhere else.
Right.
So
it's reassuring. And I'm sure, once practice starts next week, we'll have hopefully some more bits and pieces of how the roster looks and just how practice has been going and spring training and all of that for the team. But yeah, it was like you said, Zach, it was just reassuring to hear him say that he's committed here and he's fully all in. They're all in that they always use because you don't get it in Nebraska. Yeah. But
if Matt Rule could do that in emojis, he would.
Yeah, he would. He absolutely would. And I would like it and be like, retweet 10 times, don't care. We're all in. But yeah, hopefully we'll have a little bit more college football from Nebraska's aspect next week once full spring practices get going. And, I don't know if we'll hear from any other assistant coaches or if it'll be just Rule kind of going forward until the spring game. But yeah, I know the media is going to ask him how the roster looks, who's taken the QB1 reps, who's taken just the team 1 reps essentially and all of that. So hopefully we'll get that little jolt in and then we'll be done. Then we'll be done with football, hopefully until August, we think.
Unfortunately.
As we've seen, Nebraska still likes to keep drama around for off-season at periods at a time for no apparent reason.
Well, I mean, hold on now. We could potentially have, we might do something for the spring game. We don't know. So
we don't know. Well, we'll see.
We've been talking about it.
We'll see.
It's been in talks. We'll see.
There's things up sleeves right now that we'll reveal later. We'll see.
It's gonna be up one of your guys'. I'm wearing a short sleeve, so you can see everything that's under my sleeves. So
shoot.
I'm wearing a Wolves back sleeve, if that gives anything away.
And with that transition, Nate can just talk about the NBA while Zach and I sit back and relax.
The NBA is pretty status quo from what I can tell. The Wolves again are slightly less back, but we're running pretty bare bones at the moment. As we know, Karl Anthony Towns is out with his torn meniscus, probably till early May, most likely. So sometime in that first round or so of the playoffs. Rudy Gobert has been out recently, like the past 3 games or so, with a rib injury. And Naz Reid went out with a head injury against the Jazz on Sunday night. So we were playing Kyle Anderson at center against the Denver Nuggets and Nikola Jokic last night. And
how'd that go for you?
Only lost by like 3. So Anthony Edwards had a clear open 3 at the end and just missed it. So there was...
He's still running the waves.
It was a surprising game. I thought they were going to lose by 30. They were down by 18 at one point and came back and made it a game. It was an exciting second half. So can't really count them out. But yeah, they're still sitting in that top 3 spot, kind of with the Nuggets and Thunder, about game and a half back of each of them. And then it gets a little murkier as you go from kind of 4 through about 8 or so in the West. And surprisingly enough, Golden State is, I believe, 2 games back of not being in the playoff picture at all. That's
Good.
There's
good.
The Rockets are hot right now, and there's an outside chance that they could have.
Tell me that the Bulls play the Rockets tomorrow. Why would you say that?
This is so Alex can watch this ahead of time and know that.
Okay, I'll take that.
Not to take them lightly.
I'll take that.
So yeah, there's that outside chance that Golden State gets jumped for that last play-in spot.
Oh, I don't like that at all.
Intriguing times. Otherwise, yeah. I mean, as it stands right now, the play-in tournament looks stacked with Dallas, Phoenix, Lakers, and Warriors.
Zach, our teams are in the play-in games. Let's go.
I think at least in the Suns' case, they are solidly in that play-in though. Like that's unless they go on the biggest tear to end the year, I think they're solidly in that play-in.
I mean, you're only half game back of the Kings, who are in 6th.
Yeah,
so.
I was just saying.
Yeah, but I mean, the Kings have been really solid all year, so it's
not like the Bulls, who are 4 games back from 6th seed of Philly. So
yeah, I guess that's fair. But I mean, like with the Suns, though, they're either really hot one night and they can win. And this is basing entirely on stats. I haven't really had much of a chance to watch their games, but it's either they're really hot one night and then they go ice cold the next. I mean, it's just up and down. So who knows? I did see, though, speaking of Suns news, they signed Isaiah Thomas for a 10-day deal. And I was just like, he still plays?
We all had the same.
I was like, what?
I think the Utah Jazz's G League team signed him to a contract a couple weeks back, and he's been doing well there. So y'all just snatched him up, and yeah, he's giving him a shot.
So I mean, if it works out, it works out. I guess. Did you have anything else, Nate? I know there was some.
Yeah. The other cool news is that A-Rod and Mark Lord are closing in on. They have the financial backing and pretty much all the paperwork, all the I's dotted, T's crossed to change ownership from Glenn Taylor over to them. It sounds like the earliest that'll happen will be sometime in April when the Board of Governors for the NBA meets and they can approve it. So that'd be the earliest that could happen, but it's looking like new ownership is coming to Minnesota, and I think one of the stipulations in the contract is that they have to keep the franchises in Minnesota, which is always a point of contention because that was one of the Glenn Taylor wasn't the greatest owner, but the thing he did was he kept the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Minnesota Lynx in Minnesota and gave the fans something to cheer for.
But Nate, they could move to Omaha.
Or
You'd have to root for a Nebraska pro team.
So that is, and the hope with that too is that Glenn Taylor and Kevin Garnett apparently have a pretty big feud going on where Glenn Taylor refuses to even let Kevin Garnett in the building. So the hope is that with new ownership in Minnesota that will bring KG back to the team and hopefully get that jersey retired here soon. So
is that like MLB banning Pete Rose for life?
No, not quite as bad.
Okay, fine.
Different context, but kind of. Yeah.
but kind of, yeah.
Those are my NBA updates. Yep.
I obviously then Nate, you didn't see the other one that came out like a little bit before we started doing this, but a former Timberwolves analyst was charged with stealing strategic NBA information. I believe it looks like, if I'm reading this correctly, and I'm just kind of skimming through this article on ESPN real quick.
What is it? Draymond throws punches? Was that the plan they needed?
No, I don't know. I don't know what exactly. So he was fired, arrested, and charged with third-degree burglary, felony third-degree
Ooh.
burglary for allegedly stealing thousands of internal files, including this information. Looks like this happened
What's this,
on
Connor
February.
Stallions?
Basically, yeah, more or less. But like from I don't know what exactly he was trying to do
It's
with
a lot
it.
harder to cheat in the NBA than college football.
So yeah, the Wolves
No
aren't.
one plays
They're not.
defense. So what are you trying to steal?
The Timberwolves are not pursuing criminal charges, but this whole story is just super interesting, and we don't need to read through all of it. I just thought it was funny how like, oh, the Timberwolves are doing good things, and also the guy that stole from them a month ago is like probably going to jail or at least getting a big fine. So it's like,
Yep.
yeah, but apparently like he yoinked somebody's hard drive.
Yep.
And then when he returned to work, the hard drive was missing. And he was like, well, I don't know where it's at. And then they looked at the security footage and they're like, that's you taking it. What? No, it's not.
No way. No way.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well,
So
yeah,
there you
I'm
go.
sure they sold the Timberwolves secrets to the refs so they know when to not call fouls for the Timberwolves. I'm sure that's the conspiracy. So
Yeah, that ain't gonna happen.
I'm running with that.
I really wish.
If they're Big Ten refs, that ain't gonna happen.
I just wish we knew what he was doing with them. Like, I assume maybe he was like trying to just get money under the table for other teams or something, but it doesn't really say. I mean, granted, it's probably still like under investigation, but
Yeah.
that I thought was fun. So, fun story of the day.
But yeah, well, not as fun as the bobbleheads being stolen. But, you win some, you lose some.
That's right.
Just like the Penguins lost all those bobbleheads. But we'll transition to March Madness.
We made it.
To
Yay. March ball.
Before we talk about the bracket, we'll recap kind of Nebraska's run in the Big Ten tournament. So Friday night was an insanely fun game to watch. One, they kicked the crap out of Indiana, which was always fun. But, watching Casey do what Casey does and go on that heater that he did Friday was one of the most enjoyable performances I've had in quite some time. Because, one, he did it, on a meaningful stage of where it counts in the tournament. And considering all of like the bubble teams that kind of got left out of the tournament, I think Friday's win was just much more important, even though I didn't think they needed it to get in. But looking at all the teams that didn't really get in, I was like, winning those last few games after Ohio State and Indiana probably helped Nebraska like officially be locked into the tournament too. But yeah, that was such an enjoyable, fun game. And then, Saturday against Illinois, you have an incredible first half. And then the second half, they lost some mojo. Illinois, proved that why they were ranked, why they're, the second seed, better team in the Big Ten conferences. You can say all you want about the Big Ten refs, and certainly they gave Indiana a lot. They were in the bonus with 13 minutes left in the half. So you say what you wanted about that, but Terrence Shannon also went off, and that's also a debate that I'm not going to touch because that also comes with this whole host of issues of why he shouldn't even be playing in the first place. But that is
we don't want to get sued, so
we don't want to get sued, and that's a topic I don't want to touch. Regardless, as we come out to find out on Selection Sunday, Nebraska's the 8th seed. They were at the top overall 8th seed, which makes you think if they would have beat Illinois, they probably would have been a 7th seed at least. Yeah. Regardless, before we get into the whole Texas A&M thing, which they know what they're doing. The committee knows what they're doing with that. But in the past of watching Selection Sunday shows, it's like, yes, it's always exciting because you hear the music and you're like, yes, we finally get a bracket that we get to debate for 4 to 5 days before it happens. But it's that extra meeting of hearing Nebraska's name get called again. And it's just like in that moment, you're like, yes, they said my team's name for the bracket on national television. Like we're officially in. We're gonna go play a postseason basketball game, and it's so funny because you watch like the Nebraska feed of the guys cheering in Fred's basement. They're like, yeah, 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 and then they show the team who they're playing, and all of their reactions are like, oh my god, and everybody just starts laughing because they all know what it means, and I certainly know all of the internet. I know we all texted each other. They're like, "Are you crapping me right now?
Is this even legal?"
I know Zach's text was just a bunch of LOLs, all in a row.
LOL. It was like the entire line on my phone.
So that was, you do that and you're like, oh, that's just a funny coincidence. Like, yeah, like they're just doing it to be butt heads because that's what the committee does. And then 2 hours later, the women's selection show. First off, they deserve the 6th seed. They absolutely, Nebraska women deserve that 6th seed. If they would have beaten Iowa, I probably would have said a 5 seed. But they were justifiably ranked higher because a lot of them also had like Nebraska women as an 8 or 9 seed. I'm like,
That's
no, I'm like they rated 4 games in 4 days and almost beat Iowa and they lost to overtime. They're the 6th seed, and then it shows up that they're also going to play Texas A&M.
Yeah, once is a coincidence, twice is intentional. Right. They knew what they were doing,
and so
of course, people that are on that committee.
Yes.
No, we just went
like,
by.
No,
yeah,
you know what you're doing.
Sports are all about the underlying storylines
right.
that go with it. Come on.
And there's obviously 2 sides to how you want to look at this. One is you can focus on, and what we should focus on is just you're focusing on the athletes. You're focusing on your team being in a postseason game that matters now. Yeah. But I know a lot of the other storyline that's obviously it's going to be, Nebraska, who just had their AD leave to go to the new school, they're playing the new school that he's at now. So that's probably, unfortunately, what's going to dominate a lot of the headline when it shouldn't be because, Hoiberg Rule came out and said, like, yeah, it's who you're matched up against, but like that shouldn't be about Trev. It should be about these student athletes, these kids playing for your school and going out to win a game. And that's what we should be focused on. And rightfully so. I mean, that's what I'm excited to see. I mean, yeah, it's Texas A&M, but I'm excited to watch Nebraska play a meaningful postseason game for the first time in 10 years.
I do think it'll change when the tip-off happens, though, too.
Yes.
Like, leading up to it, that's all you're going to hear about for that however long, in between the games. Fine. Like, I get it. Like, you need something to talk about. But, like, once the game starts, I think a lot of people are like, whatever. Like, because then whoever wins gets, if assumedly Nebraska wins, that's already going to be a big deal for a lot of people, not just Nebraska fans, but people in general. It's like, oh, like, if nothing else, the AD that left, they just beat him. It's like, oh, now here's your storyline going forward. So, but I think after that point, it's like, okay, they proven now it's time to actually care about them playing basketball.
I think what has helped is now what I sent you guys the clips of Pat McAfee and other national outlet broadcasters are now catching on to this little Japanese Steph Curry guy called Keisei Tominaga, which obviously for us, we've known about him since, 2 years ago. But all of a sudden the national media is like, who is this kid that they're calling the Japanese Steph Curry? Yep. And then it's like they're showing highlights of the Indiana game and just his other games throughout the season. It's like, this kid can ball. And, that's like, that is the one thing I absolutely hope and pray for is like, if Keisei gets on a heater on that first game, I mean, his stock is going to go through the roof. And
I think it's storyline
is going to go through the roof.
The weird thing is we were talking about this, what was it, a week or two ago, where we were like, his number won't be retired. Well, we were talking it should be, but it's like not likely to happen in Nebraska.
Yeah. Unless they win the championship, then yes.
But then, but then like we were also talking like, oh, like he could play in the NBA, but it's not likely. But like with all this attention, if he even just shows up, he doesn't necessarily need to go on a heater. Although that'd make it way better.
Make it way better.
But like, even if he just shows up and plays a really good game and they win and they go on to even a second round, it's like he might just build himself up to be maybe not necessarily like a great NBA player right away, but like definitely at least a competent player that whoever gets him is like, oh, like we can make you a good player. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Someone will be at least willing to give him a shot.
Oh yeah. And so I mean that's from just the Nebraska aspect of March Madness for both the men and women, super exciting. If you leave out the Texas A&M drama and everything like that, but both teams play Friday. The men at 5:50 on TNT, I believe, and the women at 9:30 or 9:10, one of those two times. So it's going to be a late night for Husker fans watching basketball, but we're going to do it because we love March Madness basketball. With that, but yeah, if you guys want to, if you have more Nebraska takes, or if we just want to talk more about just the overall section of March Madness and who you got winning it all.
Whoops.
Yeah, I will.
Sorry.
I'll just step in on the Nebraska stuff.
Zach,
It's
dude.
Sorry, CBS. That was an accident. I was just trying to look up like a good list, and CBS has a really good list of like, here's the games that are coming up. And then it's like, hey, your volume's all the way up. Sorry.
So yeah, I'm excited for Nebraska. 8 seed in the men's tournament. It seems deserved. I would have liked to see a 7 seed, but again, I think like you said, if we could have taken care of Illinois and finished that game, probably.
It's nice to see that the committee was also almost on that same line of like, yes, Nebraska, if they just get like, even if they had 1 or 2 more extra wins in the regular season, I mean, considering how they were the highest ranked seed, I mean, there's a possibility they could have just been the 7th seed instead. So, but it's nice to see that like they were also kind of struggling with that. It's like, do we rank them that high, or do we just make them the top 8 seed where we think they're going to be, and so on and so forth. But I think they were 29th overall.
Yes.
So like, I mean, if you look at that from the top 25, poll standpoint, I mean, Nebraska's, four places outside the top 25 essentially in terms of ranking, if you want to look at it that way. So it's very refreshing to see that like, Nebraska's even considered to be that high.
Yeah. They've earned it, and the best part about the conference tournament was just showing that the road Nebraska is not equal to neutral court Nebraska. I think that is my biggest takeaway from the conference tournament was they just absolutely downed Indiana, took their confidence within the first, I think, 10-15 minutes of that game. And then even the Illinois game, that first half, I mean, came out and put 51 up on Illinois, and
I mean, they scored 87 in a semifinal game, and if you watch anything that Virginia did last night, completely different offense.
Man, that was going to be my big game to talk about.
Oh, you can still
talk about it. We haven't spoiled any secrets.
No. That was major sarcasm. All I'll say is I feel bad for Seton Hall.
Yeah, or any Big
or
East
any of the other 4 teams.
Yeah.
Indiana State.
Sorry, the other 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
Continue.
Although I think Indiana State, they were down. Yeah. Oh, they won. They
won their NIT game.
Okay. They were down by a lot, and then they aren't now. Okay. But yeah, it was encouraging to see, Nebraska showed up on a neutral court setting, which is what March Madness is. And even, like I said, that Illinois game didn't end great, but they showed that they could play a really high level of basketball against a really good team, and the potential is there, whether, as long as they can realize it, and whether they do that or not is, it's up in the air, but the ceiling of playing really well and playing with really good teams is there. And we've seen it against, Purdue and Wisconsin at home. We haven't really seen it on the road or in a neutral court setting. So it's encouraging to see that, especially going into the postseason now. I will say that I was a little sad that that Iowa State was knocked down to a 2 seed, so that we didn't get that first and second round in Omaha. I was really really excited for that. That was going to give me a lot more confidence in Nebraska getting their first ever tournament win if they had that home court advantage in an Omaha game. But Texas A&M still they're an 8 seed. Texas A&M's a 9 seed, so it's a winnable game. There's aspects of each other's game that really play to each other's weaknesses. So it'll be interesting to see how exactly that shakes out and who comes out on top. But it's exciting to have meaningful basketball in March for Nebraska. And before I pass it to Zach, I'll just speak quickly on the Nebraska women's, that they 100%, as you said, deserve to be a 6th seed. I'd like to see them go pretty far in the tournament. I don't know if they will, but
greater than Caitlin Clark.
They played a really good game against Iowa, and like you said, it went to overtime. So I take the copy paste the exact same statement of, they have an incredibly high ceiling when they're playing at their best, and sky's the limit for them. They're on that bottom half of the bracket, so they won't be facing their 1 seed South Carolina, unfortunately. But in theory, they wouldn't be facing them till an Elite 8 matchup. Right. So that's great to see, and I will just say that it is unfortunate that they're paired with Texas A&M. I get it, but I understand why they did it, and I know there's more reasons than just like, hey, this will be funny, but it does detract from really good seasons from both teams.
Right.
It's not a complete like, oh wow, look at this instead, but it's a headline competing with the actual story that these teams played really well and outstanding basketball season, and hopefully have a chance to do big things in the postseason. So that's just kind of my spiel on both of them. Hopefully good things do happen. We'll see on Friday. It's going to be an absolute marathon. But I'll go ahead and pass it over to Zach on his thoughts.
On Nebraska, not specifically much of anything that hasn't been covered.
You can talk about the bracket if you want to.
I was going to say, really, I know I was joking about the Virginia game, but I was looking at just some of the stats real quick.
Well, don't do that.
No. This was
one of
the
the games of all time.
Oh my God, it was so bad.
I
still think my favorite was the TV ticker or the score ticker being like has not scored since it was like 9:42 Eastern time or whatever, and I was like. That's bad. Like, I understand being cold in basketball, but that wasn't cold. That was dry ice levels of cold.
No bad.
But here's what I found the funniest, just as I was picking just things out, because I'm not going to read this whole thing, but Colorado State had 37 defensive rebounds and Virginia had 17. But Colorado State had 13 turnovers and Virginia had 4. And Virginia lost by, let me make sure I do my math right here, 25? That sure looks like 25 to me, and that's just head math, so I could be wrong. But they lost by double digits. Pretty bad. So, if anything, March Madness definitely is in full swing, but sometimes March Sadness is a real thing too. So, that game was...
I have a fun point on this. So, Virginia scored 14 points in the first half and ended with 42 points total. If you guys remember, back in early March, Pepperdine and Pacific played, and Pacific had 9 points in the first half, and they finished with 43 total.
Oh, yeah.
So Virginia.
So that was a running joke too. So they went to like halftime during the broadcast, and one of the guys, I can't remember his name, tweeted out directly is like, whoever wins has to score, like, so the winner of the game, he said that they have to score at least 50 points, otherwise the game doesn't count. And I mean, obviously Colorado State was able to fulfill that, but like, it's just funny to me that I mean, there's very few times where I watch a basketball game and be like, that was bad. A lot of times it's like, you can kind of start to pick apart where things go. Like even the Nebraska game against Illinois, when they finally started losing and, it was like, this game is pretty well over. It was never bad. It wasn't good, but it was never like absolutely terrible. That's all that game was. And even to Colorado State, like they finally figured it out in the second half. They're like, okay, like I'm pretty sure they just cruised through the second half because they were able to score finally. First 10 minutes of that game, I swear, I walked out and I walked out to my kitchen. I got something to drink and was just doing something. I came back in like 5 minutes later, and it was 9 minutes left in the first half, and it was like 9-8. I'm like, what is going on? Not expecting, NBA levels of scoring here at this point, but like 9-8.
Yeah.
And they had a thing that came up, and it was like Virginia had missed the last one of 8 or made one of the last 8 or something. I was like, wow, this is rough. Rough watch.
Yeah.
Rough watch.
But my favorite thing, and this has always been the case with just March Madness in general, is that you see a lot of your big teams, your ones that are on TV all the time, but then you see a lot of these other teams that I shouldn't say I've never heard of them, but for lack of a better way to put it, it's like I see some of these teams on here and you're just like, dang, like where'd these guys come from? Like JMU. I mean, I know where they came from and, they had a good year, but it was just like.
They beat Michigan State in the first game of the season.
Right. But I mean, like I had forgotten all about that leading up to this. So it's just like, and then they said that they were one of, I think, 4 teams that won more than 30 games in the season. So it's just like.
Wisconsin should be on watch.
This is the best.
I'm picking them in a lot of my brackets.
Legitimately, though. Like, I think
I'm all in on James Madison.
And it's just like, teams like that where obviously, that's why people watch March Madness to see those teams that have no shot, quote unquote, that all of a sudden just come out of nowhere and kill it. So
that James Madison Nebraska Sweet 16 is going to hit something good.
You're right, because Longwood is beating Houston.
No, Nebraska is.
No. Even better.
Although, come on, how funny would it be if Longwood did beat Houston? For 2 reasons. 1, Houston would lose, and 2, it's Longwood.
You could say Longwood.
Come on. I mean, that's just funny in general. Yeah, but those are the games I'm really looking forward to is my favorite part of March Madness is the first 3 or 4 days. Because that once it gets out of the Elite 8, it's still fun to watch by all means, but at that point it's like, oh well, now we know who's are there any Cinderellas out there that are gonna go on a tear, but maybe, and I do legitimately think Nebraska has a chance. It might not be the biggest of chances, but I think they've got a chance to really show something. So yeah, so it's gonna be a lot of fun to watch.
Who do you guys have winning? Most commonly out of your brackets that you have placed. I know we have. I'm not 25 yet, Nate, but I'll get there.
Yeah, I'm at a solid 0. So I haven't filled any out yet.
A day, not even. You have less. You have almost 12 hours.
I work best under pressure.
Fine.
I'll at least get one filled out.
So I have UConn kind of winning in the majority of mine.
You mean besides Nebraska?
Maybe yes. Besides your Nebraska brackets that have made them, yes. Because I've also made brackets where Nebraska wins.
Yeah, I think I don't know, just from what I've seen, it feels like the winner will most likely come from either the Purdue side of the bracket or the UConn side of the bracket.
Right.
That's where I feel like the best potential is. I think the East bracket, UConn's bracket, was by metric standpoint the toughest one, with because Iowa State should have been higher. Auburn won the SEC, should have been higher. Illinois won the Big Ten, should have been higher. So that's a rough stretch there. Yeah, I think UConn's the easy answer. I mean, they won last year. They've been a machine this year with only a handful of losses. Houston, right up there. Purdue, depending on the day, I mean, it's inherently tough to stop a 7'4" guy. So I mean, that's always going to be working in their favor. I
mean, I think this is the year that they won't get bounced in the first round.
Yeah,
I hope so. My only thing against Purdue, if I had to lay anything out, is kind of the same Nebraska. I'd almost argue this more of a Big Ten problem, is that they've just, when they've looked good, they've looked really good, and then when they've looked bad, they've been bad. So it's like which version of Purdue shows up. Where with like UConn, they've had a couple bad games, which I think in basketball is just to be expected. You're not. I don't think any team is ever going to be entirely on all the time. I mean, unless you're like the 96 Bulls or whatever. But like, and even then, they had bad games. So it's like I don't think in the regular season you're never going to see a team that has a perfect game every time. It doesn't happen. That's why you watch sports. But like Purdue has, in terms of the 1 seeds at least, I think has looked the most inconsistent. At least as we come down the trail when it really matters as you're looking in, because you've still got a month if you're going to make it beyond a certain if you're going to make it, well, maybe not a month, but got at least a tough couple of weeks. Good Lord, tough couple of weeks to play. And so, yeah, to me, I think Purdue is going to be the first 1 seed to get not tomorrow, but
and I mean, to be fair, they don't exactly have a lot of tourney experience.
Yeah,
to be blunt about it, their past few years have not been kind to them. So
I'm between. I'm just looking at the. I'm between either North Carolina or UConn. I think those two are. Yeah. If we're gonna go just like your basic answers in terms of your 1 seeds. My fun answer that I think could actually make a decent run at it is, where did they go?
Creighton?
Maybe, but I
know Nate doesn't want to hear that answer, but they have a really.
I don't want to hear it, but I'm on board with it.
They have a really good bracket to get through.
Yeah, I think Creighton could do some. I mean, they did pretty well last year, didn't they?
Yeah, they got to the Elite Eight, and
that was the farthest they ever got.
The ticky-tacky call at the end that gave SDSU the win to get to the Final Four, but
that wasn't the one I was thinking. But they're up there. I think Tennessee could make an interesting run because they've also,
which is in the same bracket. So
that is like one of my dream scenarios, is just Creighton versus Tennessee. I would just love to see that.
That'd be a fun game.
I mean, I think it might be the Elite 8 or Sweet 16 matchup.
That would be a Sweet 16.
It might be a Sweet 16 matchup if they make it there. So yeah, there's a chance that it probably could happen.
That matchup, and then Carolina, Arizona, and the Elite Eight are like two of my. If they happen, I will be locked in watching those games.
Yeah, those would be fun. Who's the other one?
But for me, I mean, UConn. Yeah, I would say Houston for me over Carolina. Carolina has been just wildly inconsistent. There is the worry, that Houston just didn't show up against Iowa State.
Right. And the same thing could happen at any of their games again.
But they were, outside of that game, they were one of the most consistent teams. Their offense was there. Their defense was outstanding. Assuming they don't get bounced by Nebraska in the second round, I'd say they have a pretty good shot.
Obviously.
Especially, good chance Wisconsin's not making it out of the first round. No. Do you think? I feel like Houston can beat Duke.
Do we feel like
Marquette's all right, but I'm not too worried. Right.
Do you feel like NC State has the magic still in them?
NC State is one I want to watch really closely.
I mean,
Texas Tech is a tough matchup, though.
To win 5 games in 5 days is pretty tough, but this is a whole new beast now.
Yeah, and Texas Tech will have time to prepare for DJ Burns. So, interesting to see what they
have just played 5 games in 5 days.
Yeah.
How much, in terms of playoff bracket experience, does Houston have compared to like North Carolina? Because that was my reason for North Carolina.
Not compared to North Carolina.
Well, and I understand like we're talking different North Carolina, just like we're talking different Duke compared to years, many years prior. But like North Carolina has done this before, which is why I put them above Houston. Because I was in the same boat. I was like, I think Houston has like the better team, but when you get down to this point in the season, I'm taking that previous experience. But that's still
say they went far last year. I don't remember how far.
Well, and I know Houston's been really good for a while too. I mean, it's not like they're completely new to this.
Right.
They're not really like us in that same scenario where if we win on Friday, I'm pretty sure the basketball fans of Nebraska might almost riot in the best way.
Yeah, they lost to Miami in the Sweet 16, so they didn't go quite as far as I thought, but they at least made the Sweet 16 last year. I think they were decent 2 years ago as well. I know Kelvin Sampson usually has pretty solid.
Yeah.
groups.
So I mean, like I said, Houston's not by any means a bad pick. Really, the only one.
Yeah, they made Final Four in 21.
Okay, well, there you go.
Yeah.
I'm sticking with I think my favorite thing is, though, as we went around it, we all have 3 different number 1 seeds that we pick as our I mean, we all agreed that UConn was good, but like
that's the joy of March Madness.
Yep.
We don't have to be the same, Zach.
We don't.
I will say usually I think the most interesting matchups in the first round are the 5-12s. Because those are some
easy.
Gonzaga against 30-3 McNeese, Wisconsin against 31-3 James Madison. UAB San Diego State's a little more iffy, but UAB has been on a heater in the Atlantic Sun tournament. Then St. Mary's Grand Canyon. I think Grand Canyon's 30-3 or 31-3 as well. So it's those games are I'm hoping will be interesting at least. They have potential.
McNeese is one. The Gonzaga McNeese matchup. I was like, that one could be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
that's the worst part. It's either going to be March Madness or March Sadness, and like between on some of these games.
And I feel like we have to talk about Kansas just because Bill Self came out right before Sunday. And I was like, yep, we're going to have a healthy team. The team that's played all season is going to be out there for the tournament completely healthy. And then like a day after they announced the bracket, Bill Self comes out and says, Kevin McCullough's not going to be playing. So they, to be fair, Kansas learned from Florida State that don't disclose injuries or their severity. But I think that might have inflated things a bit because they got a drubbing by Cincinnati in the tournament, and I don't think they finished the season on a hot note either. So
they did not.
Yeah, so
I'm glad you said that because I was about to say them as like, I think they could make a run, and then I was like, no, wait, something was weird about them. So I'm really glad you said
about this.
And they get, I think Samford, it's called Buckyball. Their coach's name is Bucky, and they shoot a lot of 3-pointers. Is the gist of what I read on it.
So they play it like we all used to play, like the old college basketball video games.
Yeah,
just yuck up a 3.
Yep.
Okay, I like that. I like that.
Yes.
So Samford and McNeese State could be an interesting second round matchup. So pencil in Gonzaga, Kansas, naturally.
Are there any others on here? Well, we're still waiting for one more to get done, so we know who exactly is it going into the one against Florida. Is that who they'll play?
Yep. The winner of Colorado and Boise State.
That Howard, I know we've kind of already exhausted the bracket to a certain degree, but that Howard Wagner game was just that was awesome.
Yeah,
like they were just chucking up threes at the end.
Yeah, and then Howard had, and I was more like I just wanted it to go to overtime just because that was the first game I think that was first 4, so it was like, if this is how this is going to start,
set the tone.
And I feel like it is the tone that is set for the rest of the tournament. And then not only that, but then that game is then followed up by Colorado. I'm going to keep dunking on this. Colorado State, Virginia. It's like we were talking before the season even started. It's like, man, I'm not the biggest college basketball fan. I've since, I'm getting bigger into it after this year, especially with Nebraska doing better. But if that was the first game I watched with this tournament, I'd be like, I'm out. I can't do this. I cannot do this. Which is ridiculous. I understand that. That's terribly ridiculous. But
that guy's shirt though, the Virginia basketball is Iowa football.
Tracks.
That might be
onto
the
something.
that might be the most exciting thing that came out of that game.
It tracks.
I'm sure Colorado State fans, if there are any that listen to us, like they're like, "Hey, wait a minute!" Like, no, good for you guys.
Not about you guys.
But
Not
like,
about you guys.
no, but like, just pick it up. Pick it up.
Mhm.
Anything else you guys want to talk about
think
with March
that's-
Madness?
No, I'm excited.
Obviously we've got more to talk about as the games whittle down. So
Right.
Yeah. I will just get one last thing on the women's bracket. Iowa got.
Yes. Yeah.
They have
Mhm.
UCLA, Kansas State, and LSU, the team that they lost to in the national
Champ-
championship,
yep.
all in their region.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I forgot about that.
that is a gauntlet.
Yeah,
My
they're gonna
goodness.
pull out everything Caitlin Clark wise to be good.
Yeah, like I feel bad for Nebraska being like in South Carolina's region because if that all works out well, that would be the matchup. But like
Right.
for Iowa to make it that far, they have some teams to play.
They had some teams to play.
Yep.
But
right
yeah,
on, boys.
I think with that, we'll transition to a little bit of stickball real quick. Before I get to the bigger news, one of the free agent big news that we were discussed last week, Blake Snell had finally decided to sign with an MLB team now. 2-year deal with the San Fran Giants. So good for San Francisco. That's really all I know about that. Don't know anything about the Giants. Don't care to either, but I know they got a really good pitcher, and that's about it.
This one falls more under injury news, but I didn't realize this until today as we were recording this.
Mhm.
So this is why this is on our notes if we're all looking at it. But Bryce Harper was apparently out, I think maybe early this week, but then they asked him in his presser today, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll be ready to go." So
Yeah,
for those that were listening for Bryce Harper news, he will be ready to go for opening day.
you have him on your fantasy baseball team.
Didn't even know, honestly, that he wasn't practicing at the moment.
Right.
But
Yep.
here we go. So
Now,
now
also,
I was gonna say Andy's got the big story in the MLB. So
the pre-clue to that big story is, fun fact, if you didn't know, the MLB season technically started today. The Dodgers and Padres played at 5 a.m. Central Time in Korea today. Dodgers won that 5-2. And fun part about this story is they'll play again tomorrow. They'll just switch home and away sides. And then both teams will go back and play 3 more spring training games. And then they'll officially be done with spring training. And then they'll get to the regular season like everybody else does. So they'll have 2 games of the 162 game slate under their belt already by the time they come back to do more spring training games. And then they'll play the regular season again. So,
raise your guys' hand if you were awake watching this game. For our audio only listeners, nobody has their hand up.
Your boy was not getting up at 3 a.m. local time
Korea baseball.
to watch you Darvish pitch.
Well, not with that attitude.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So I guess congrats if you're a Dodgers or Padres fan. Your season already started.
Only to put it on pause for another week.
3 days. And then play games again.
Well, yeah.
But the story that dropped today that is probably going to have more repercussions than we know right now. So if you know anything about Shohei Ohtani, he speaks very, very, very little, if not any English at all. He always has his interpreter on by his side, either in the dugout or post-game media, pre-game media, whatever that's there to interpret for him. Story that came out today was the Dodgers fired said interpreter for some illegal sports gambling that may or may not have been happening through the interpreter. What we know kind of now right now is that about $4.5 million was lost of Shohei's money to said illegal sportsbook gambling. And the interesting part about the story was like ESPN kind of did like a 90-minute interview with him and the interpreter, and then he kind of like he admitted it, but then after the interview ended, he went back and said, "Nah, I didn't do it." And then his lawyer stepped in and said, "Nah, he didn't do it." So it's kind of like a whole cluster mess right now of who did what, who said what type thing. All we know is that Shohei may or not be involved. I don't really know. If you really want the fun side of the story, you can probably guess that he maybe was doing the sportsbook gambling through his interpreter, and the interpreter went to said legal sportsbook and did the betting for him. Very well could be the case.
But again, we aren't officially saying that because we don't want to get sued.
We don't want to get sued. It also very well could be it's just the interpreter did it all himself. I don't really know. But the more wild twist of this story is supposedly in his contract, according to a few of the ESPN beat writers, is that Shohei put in his contract with the Dodgers that if anybody from like his personal staff that was employed by the Dodgers, i.e. said interpreter, or if the Dodgers had fired their coach before the end of the season or like during the season, that Shohei can just opt out of the contract by the end of the 2024 season and might not be a Dodger anymore. So that domino has already fallen. So in theory, if Shohei didn't want to play with the Dodgers by the end of the season, he could just leave and just sign with somebody else. So, like I said, this story probably will have more ripple effects as we get further down the road and more information comes out. But kind of all we know is maybe the interpreter did it, maybe he didn't. All we know is about $4.5 billion is lost of said money.
Pocket change.
Not for the guy who deferred all of his money to the end of the contract. Which, if he chooses to leave, I don't even know if he gets any of that.
Well, no, it's still pocket change. It just depends on when we're talking about he has, when he pays it. If it's right now,
Right.
maybe not as much, but if it's later at the end of those 10 years, and he's like, oh, yeah, I need to pay that back.
Yeah.
So
easy.
That was the big MLB story that came out today. That I'm sure more information will come out, but it's kind of funny.
Good, you know what? Good for
and I don't even know if you're Rob Manfred right now and like you need some sort of discipline. Do you discipline like the biggest international player in the world right now because of this? And your best MLB talent of the future, like, do you just ban him and suspend him? And it's like, sorry, you're not playing. Yeah, like, do you just do it to your biggest star of your sport right now? That's like suspending Michael Jordan back in the 90s. It's like, why would you do that?
It's a good thing everybody loves Rob Manfred anyway.
Yes, such a stellar commissioner of all the commissioners. Some might say he's even worse than Roger Goodell. That's saying a lot. You know that whole uniform debacle? Yeah, that hasn't been resolved yet. It's still ongoing.
It ain't gonna. It's not gonna be.
It's not gonna get resolved. Said we didn't do anything wrong. Like, no,
Fanatics also was like, oh, hey, like the CEO was like, hey guys, like you guys should make fun of us. It really is upsetting that you're dogging on our uniforms and our quality of merch. And it's like, well, maybe if your quality of merch wasn't bad, we wouldn't be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, theoretically,
wads of 100s.
Again, theoretically, we're not here to get sued. We're just making generalized statements.
But that's all I have for Major League Baseball. The college aspect of it is Nebraska swept Nichols this past weekend. And then they beat UNO last night, and they just beat NDSU tonight. So they are on a 5-game heater right now. I think they sit at 15-5 on the season. So Nebraska baseball slowly creeping up the win and RPI charts for them this season. And it's surprisingly, Will Walsh, not surprisingly, but Will Walsh has kind of been on a heater right now, both pitching and hitting. He's had like 3 or 4 home runs the past 4 games. I think he hit one last night. He pitched tonight, so I don't think he batted tonight. But he had 3 games in a row where he hit a home run, and then I think that Nichols series he went like 5 for 8 or 6 for 8 at the plate. So, dude had a good weekend. He's going to be a name to watch going forward. But yeah, it's really all I have for college baseball. I think Florida State's undefeated still. Yep. I'm positive. They're probably going to come to Omaha if they don't lose. They might not lose another game. I don't know.
Nebraska is currently one spot ahead of Texas A&M in the RPI.
Full circle.
There is a non-zero chance that by the end of the season we could be.
Could you
in
imagine
College
if
Station.
if Nebraska doesn't host the regional and A&M does, and Nebraska gets picked to go to A&M's regional?
I
Vice
don't
versa.
know why we haven't just booked
regional.
our tickets already.
And if A&M had to come to us for a regional, if we had to host, oh my God, I would be convinced the NCAA had it out for us.
Well, it's going to depend entirely on how Friday goes for us, though. Because, like, if we win, then it's like, we don't even worry about Texas A&M anymore. So it's like, you guys are going to come here? We got you. No big deal. If we lose, well,
then I want that college baseball revenge.
Yes, correct. The ghost of Trev hangs in the halls until we play them in baseball.
Yeah. That's all I have for college baseball. Just keep an eye on Florida State because they're probably going to keep winning. If you want to look at it from a national perspective, that's really all I know about the national overview of college baseball.
Well, I'll move over. I'll take a little bit. There's stuff happening in ice ball, but right now we're getting down to the Stanley Cup playoffs are coming up. So ESPN, I was just kind of reading through some of that stuff. ESPN is highlighting the Stars this week, which I was looking kind of just through wins, losses, and their
Lincoln Stars?
Huh?
The Lincoln Stars?
No, not quite. Nope. In this case, it's the Dallas Stars.
They got the opposite of relegated.
And the Dallas Stars are on a tear. So they're the highlight. I don't know if it's the week or the day, but they're the ones that ESPN was talking about. So I kind of was doing some on that. If the season were to end today, I had it pulled up and then I closed out of it. But if the season were to end today, the teams that would be in are loading still. Right now, it would be the top teams. I'm not going to go through all these because there's a lot, but the top teams would be Boston and Florida in the Atlantic, New York and Carolina in the Metropolitan, Winnipeg and Colorado in Central, and where is my other one? Oh, and then Vancouver and Edmonton, which I think was basically how it was. Maybe some slight movement here or there, but those 8 teams are your favorites right now to make a pretty good run. So yeah, like I've said in the past, we're gonna. At least I am. I don't know about you guys. I'll probably start watching more as the playoffs kind of kick into more of a gear, just so that way I can kind of focus in on a couple teams and really kind of watch how they play. And
same here.
Because as a native sports ballie here, I must admit NHL has been lower on my list of sports that I do watch. So I got a lot to learn. But
because you're starting with F1 now.
Hey, the Minnesota Wild are still bad. But
well, at least I know that.
They're only like 2 games out of the last wild card spot. So,
and also the good thing about F1 is that it's only on the weekends and it's not even every weekend. Like, I can get that stuff out of the way right now, actually. LOL. It's Australian race weekend. So there'll be more to come next week. But yeah. So NHL, we're still just on the downhill slide of the season. Once the Stanley Cup playoffs get here, as the playoffs ramp up, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about it. But yeah, as of right now, it's just trailing off to the end of the year before the playoffs start. So then now I'm going to pass it over to Nate for the college hockey update. Unless you want me to do it because I filled in all these notes.
I just have the NCHC part of the college slick boys. So don't. If you're listening now, don't listen to last week, the college hockey segment.
Nate made a big boo-boo. Somebody
hacked our broadcast and put words in my mouth that were possibly incorrect. So the Frozen Face-Off is happening this week.
Can we blame Zach's brother?
Maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like that's something you would do.
So the Frozen Face-Off is happening this week. Begins on Friday. North Dakota faces off against Omaha, interestingly enough, at 4 p.m. Central Time. And St. Cloud State will be playing Denver at 7:30 Central Time. The winner of those games will go on to play 7:30 on Saturday night for the championship of the Frozen Face-Off. And the winner of that, there's a very good chance that the winner of that will be a 1 seed in the playoff postseason for college hockey once that gets all resolved. So a lot of things at stake there, and that is my NCHC update. Zach's got the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, the rest of it just being the other leading to the finals, which will then create I assume the big bracket for all of these college teams. But the Hockey East, I assume these are divisions, I guess. I don't honestly know, but that's how I'm reading this. The Hockey
They're like
East division.
conferences.
Oh, yeah, conference. There you go.
Yeah.
That's what I was looking for. The Hockey East Conference has UMass versus Boston College. And these times are like this. These are all happening on Friday and Saturday, I think, with the final games following suit shortly after. So Hockey East Conference is UMass versus Boston College, and then Maine versus Boston University. ECAC, don't know what that stands for, but I call it ECAC. This might be how they word it too. Is Quinnipiac.
There you go.
All right, versus St. Lawrence and Dartmouth versus Cornell. So all of these teams, obviously, like I've heard of their place, never heard of them in terms of like hockey. So no idea who we should be even favoring here. Obviously, the one we're all going for is Omaha in the NCHC.
Well,
I mean, I am, you North Dakota homer.
Grand Forks for life.
Yeah.
CCHA, Michigan. Oh, so these are the ones that happen, I think, on Saturday. So whoever wins this, then this is the games that are happening later. These are the finals for these. CCHA conference, Michigan Tech at Bemidji State. The Big Ten is Michigan at Michigan State. And then Atlantic is, I had to look these two up because on when I was looking at the names, it was just AIC and RIT. And so American International College out of Springfield, Massachusetts, and then Rochester Institute of Technology out of Rochester, New York. So those are the big college hockey games that are happening all basically this weekend. So we've got March Madness and college hockey.
Woo!
What a slate.
We love it, don't we?
Something like that.
Something like that. Well, I love it. I don't know about you, but I love it.
I think so. Actually, so this isn't necessarily big news just yet, but this is something that we can also throw on our docket of more stuff to watch because it's not like we're busy people or nothing. The UFL, which is the mix of XFL and USFL. So for those that don't know, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson took over the XFL, which was previously the AAF, which was long before that, previously once again the XFL. And then the USFL, basically the long and short is the UFL is now the spring football league that the United States of America is still trying to make happen because people want spring football. And I'll admit, I am up there. I think spring football is a lot of fun to watch. The UFL brings a lot of some cool ideas. I think there's a lot of fun things that can happen in those spring leagues that just, it's not like the NFL in terms of product, but I think it could be. And I think The Rock, for everything you can probably make fun of him for, is at least a decent enough businessman to know how to keep a football league running in that case.
You would think.
I mean, I think he's got. I'm not going to say if it fails. I'm not going to necessarily say it's his fault. I think he's got a good idea of how to run a business. It's just going to be more, do they pull in enough people to keep it afloat? Which again wouldn't necessarily be his fault. But yeah, so that's starting, I think, next week. I believe that's next week, so that'll be something to watch too.
If it fails, it's because they didn't hire Mike Riley as one of the coaches.
Oh,
Confirmed.
You know, I could see that. I could see that.
sure.
So and UFL, I believe, is just United Football League, isn't it? Does anybody know?
I think so.
Just wow, real original.
You nailed it.
At least with XFL, it was cool. But and USFL was just too wordy.
You're right.
But anyway, on to our final segment.
Yeah, I didn't have a play this week. I did not do my research in time. If you just want to pull the entire Indiana-Nebraska game, but just watch Casey's highlights, you can just watch that as my play of the week.
I also failed this week, I'll admit. So
I have an actual play this week.
No,
You're welcome, Andy.
You're gonna bamboozle us.
You're welcome, Andy. I played by the rules.
But I do have to ask. I do have to ask before we get too far into this. Is there an order that I'm supposed to pull these up in? Because you have two.
Yeah, first one. First.
So I could be bamboozled still.
It's the play and then something concerning the play.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. So you put it in the order here too.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Well, you made my job a little bit easier.
I try my best.
It's overrated. Who does that?
Yeah, who does that?
Okay, so let me get this pulled up so you guys can see it too.
It is the play of the week and quite possibly, at least for now, the dunk of the year. Anthony Edwards murdered a man.
He
on
did.
The court.
He did do this with this.
Nikhil Alexander-Walker with the pass to Anthony Edwards dislocates his finger on his hand and gives John Collins a concussion all at once. One of the top dunks of all time. I've seen tweets from NBA players of that saying that it's been a top 10 dunk of all time. Just absolutely destroyed. No mercy for that man. Took his entire soul.
He did. He really did.
You'll see in the next image, though, Kyle Anderson's reaction in the background. Just something else.
Oh yes, the art of making sports.
Yep.
There
was a rendition of this. Anthony Edwards just staring down his food. Kyle Anderson watching in dismay in the background.
You know what? This is by far.
Account.
This is why they teach history. Like
right.
This right here is why they teach history.
So one guy can just make accounts that he sees.
This is amazing.
It's pretty accurate though.
I love that account. That dude he does everything so well.
I'm also just going to throw it out there. I know that we've all we try to always have a play of the week so that way we can keep things exciting here at the Sportsball Podcast. But nothing beats that. Like, I'm just going to say it. Maybe next week we'll have something that's back on the level. But
yeah, Casey going for 50.
That'd do it. That would do it. Nothing's beating this week. This is just hilarious.
Yeah, that's a great tweet.
Shout out to Art But Make It Sports.
That's a great account. If you don't follow it, I would recommend it.
Yep.
So you know what? Good for them. I love that. Well, I think
you guys can say your goodbyes. If we don't have anything else,
my goodbye is my header here. March Madness in this economy.
Remember, games start off 11:15 Central Time AM tomorrow. So get those brackets in if you're listening to this in the morning. Hey,
I posted mine. I posted mine while we were doing this. I was working on it back and forth, so
we made that lovely Facebook post earlier in the week. If you wanted to join our sports ball bracket group on ESPN, all the instructions are on that post of how to join and get your bracket in, so you compete against our tiny, small brains, smooth brains, if you will, in terms of making
Nate,
bracket
by the way,
picks.
for getting that set up.
So see if you're better than our smooth brains.
Smoothest brains in the business.
Smoothest brains. We know so much about sports, though. That's the only wrinkle.
We still don't know how we're allowed to do this, but
No.
here we are.
But yeah, like I said, men play 5:50 on Friday, and the women at about 9:10 or 9:30 after that. So it'll be, no matter if you're just watching the Nebraska games or watching all of March Madness, like we all are going to do, it's going to be a fun weekend of sports. Is truly one of the best weekends of sports of the year. We get just so much all at once, and we hopefully will get our Cinderella upsets and Nebraska ball getting that first elusive win in 10 years in the tournament. So with that, sign it off, and we'll talk to you all next week, hopefully about some wins for our basketball teams.